Hey, I'm Dirty Dan and welcome back to Greasy Boy Customs. We're going to go ahead and move forward with our M37 project by removing the front sheet metal and the radiator so we can get that engine and transmission out of our way and onto somewhere else. We also got some sweet wheels and tires that are going on that our customer picked up special for this. And we're also going to go ahead and get the wiring ripped out of the way while we're waiting on all of our components like the engine and transmission, radiator, fuel injection, exhaust, yada, yada, yada. The list goes on and on and on. Let's go ahead and tear some stuff apart. That's the fun part, right? Let's get to work. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Some fun stuff now, the engine and the transmission. As you can see, we've got a Chevrolet Vortex style 350 engine putting out somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 horsepower. This is a significant step up from the 70-something horsepower that the stock engine was putting out. We purchased this engine through Jegs. I called, talked to one of their sales representatives, a gentleman named Joe. He spent almost 45 minutes on the phone with me making sure I have everything I need, including the hardware, the balancer, torque converter, transmission, the Phytech fuel injection setup, and as well as any other little knickknacks that I may need to make this work. Now we're going to be mating this with a brand new TCI Turbo 350 transmission. You can see it right there in the plastic. And then we're going to set it in the truck. We're going to use a front block engine mount, and then we're going to have to fabricate a transmission mount. First things first, let's go ahead and get these mated together and on the hoist and start testing some stuff out and see if it fits right. Before we can bolt the engine and transmission together, we need to take care of a couple things. First things first, the flex plate. Now you can see we've got it on the back of the engine already. There is an alignment dowel here so you can line it up in the correct position. And also there is a sticker indicating engine side so you know which way to put it on. If you were to put this on incorrectly, it would either bind up or you wouldn't be able to get the engine and transmission together at all. So there is only one way to put this on. We also went ahead and got the bolts from ARP through Jegs to go on here, and it comes with an assembly lubricant that they recommend you use as well. Put these on, torque them, then we're going to go ahead and install our torque converter and start mating everything together. Let's get it handled. Before we put the torque converter actually in the transmission, we're going to go ahead and add some fluid that Jegs sent, this quick shift performance fluid. You want to add a little bit in there. There's a huge debate, half quart, a quart. Put some in there so it's lubricated and then install it. If you haven't installed a torque converter, you just kind of put it on there, turn, push, turn, push, turn, push, and there's usually about 3 stages and it's locked in all the way. If it's not, you will know when you try to put them together with the engine because it won't fit. Let's go ahead and do it. The motor is in. Let's talk about what we had to do to get here though. It wasn't just drop it in and you're ready to go. There was a little bit more work and planning and thinking ahead that made sure that this is going to work okay. For instance, we'll start at the front. You've got a radiator that's going to go right here. You need to make sure that your pulleys and your balancer, your belt are going to clear the radiator and leave room for a fan if you need it, or an electric fan on the front side, whichever you're doing for your application. You got to make sure that the headers are going to clear the chassis. Also, we had to make sure that the headers and the exhaust are going to clear the front axle and the oil pan clear the front axle. With this being a 4-wheel drive application, you got a big hogshead or a pumpkin, whatever you want to call it, you need to make sure that everything clears. You also need to make sure that your tail shaft lands in the correct position to line up with your rear axle, or in this case, the divorced transfer case. You don't want them at crazy angles. And pinion angles is a whole different thing we'll talk about later. You need to make sure your motor is level left to right, and you need to make sure it is level front to back. Now, when you're checking it front to back, do it right here where the carburetor or throttle body bolt down. Don't do it on the valve covers. These are not always the same plane. So level this. Your valve covers may slope down towards the firewall a little bit. That is fine. Just try to land it as close to zero as you can. Also pay attention to your hood. When your hood shuts, are you going to have room for the air cleaner? Is your distributor going to clear your firewall? There's a lot of steps you got to do. Now, as far as the motor mounts, we had this cool motor mount plate, which makes things so much easier, and then you don't have to worry about doing side mounts and getting around the exhaust. We did have to take 1/4-inch steel and make a bracket down here on the side for it to land on, like a landing pad. And right now we have a metal spacer in there. It will get a rubber hockey puck style motor mount and a bolt through it. And then we'll probably weld a nut on the back side as the attaching point for the bolt. We do have to do a couple other things. The transmission is only held up by a floor jack right now. If you do that, make sure you put a block of wood in between your jack and your transmission pan. We need to make the transmission mount and get that set, and then we can go ahead and continue on. While you were looking at the engine install, you may have noticed this gearbox change. We took the factory gearbox off and went ahead and installed this Saginaw GM power steering box. It's part of a conversion kit that my customer purchased. It's designed to work with the factory engine and this bracket which mounts it to the frame. We'll go into this in a little more detail later. I just wanted to go ahead and mount this to make sure it didn't interfere with anything with our engine. This kit's really nice, and it comes with all the hardware and brackets and bushings and bearings that you'll need to convert your M37 over to power steering. I'll put the link right here so you guys can check it out yourself and look more into it if you'd like to. And feel free to email me if you have any questions about the kit. Let's wrap this up. Well, that's going to wrap things up for this episode. We got some good progress done. Again, the engine is set in place. We still have to build the transmission mount. We still got to finish ripping out the rest of the wiring and finish the power steering gearbox conversion upgrade. We'll take care of some of that stuff in the next episode. And even after all that's done, we still got to do the gear swap in the axles and finish hooking up our driveline, the shifter, the gauges. There's going to be a ton more work to do. Thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, hit me up at greasyboycustoms@gmail.com or on any of our social media platforms. Till next time, happy hot rodding.